But these are actually pretty cool because they're dynamic, and some of them are like kind of shakers, maracas. Like as people in society, as artists, is really responding to these things we're seeing that like hit us here. And then it's like, okay, what can I do that actually has an impact? My surfaces, my aesthetic, and then kind of the history of why I made the vessel this way, why the top of the vase still is kind of formal in that sense.
Hi guys, welcome to l8street magazine. Today I'm at Chicago-based sculptor's studio and I'd like to show you his space where he works and just talk a little bit more about his art. Let's see.
Hello, welcome
Hi,
Anastasia, come
thank
in.
you.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, good.
Welcome, welcome. All right, let's head back to the spot.
Wow,
Yeah.
very cozy. Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming over. So this is kind of like, I would say, my landlord space. Sarah Hicks works out at SEIC and has kind of a dope casting artistic practice where she makes a lot of cool little sculptures and like wall hanger stuff. I actually found this space from her that was posted on Craigslist. So I got lucky when I was looking for a spot. My friend sent me the clip and I was like, hit him up. And I was one of the first ones to tour it too, and then decided.
And you work at the smaller studio right there?
Yes, yes. So I wish this was all my space. There's another maker. Then we have another maker. So I get half of this. It's been a really great space for me. It was really clean, you know. It was very like welcoming. I get along with everybody, but I get along with women well. They're all women in the studio. They're all older women. So, you know, I don't know, I got along. I felt like I fit in.
Okay, Aaron, I'd like to talk about your art. How did you start and why sculptures? And I think my first question will be why clay?
Yeah.
And what draws you to use clay as a material?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, I'll start with the why clay. And it's kind of interesting because I have to take my context right now, you know, into consideration, because it couldn't be that way always, you know, because that why develops with my practice, you know. And so for now, like why clay is very transparent. I recently spoke to someone, I was like, it's like a mirror, you know, like every ounce of energy you put in it, even if you breathed on it, it's going to have impact and effect, you know. So for me, someone who needs transparency, maybe used to lie a lot when I was a kid, you know, and made a stance like to myself, like I'm going to talk less and listen more. And so with clay, it was about collaborating with a material, you know. Someone told me once, clay knows more than everybody because it's the ground we all have walked on. And so it's like, okay, my hands are absorbing this material so if people walk on it and it impacts their life, imagine if you work with it every day. And so that was a big part of that, the why now. The why then was a teacher saw me in the hallway up to no good and just like one day was like, you know what, you should come check this out. Literally like took me into the clay studio before the first bell rang and was like, here's the pug mill, this is how we fire everything. And I was just like, what? She's like, have you taken your art classes yet? And I'm like, no. She's like, you should sign up, you should definitely take those. And so I went, and I actually couldn't get into her class. And this was junior year, like right away, like first week, junior year, like, and so she's like, okay, she must have had a thought in the summer, like, we're getting him into something else. I was struggling, sports guy, a lot of injuries, couldn't really play sports, you know, was just kind of like struggling, trying to maintain, but had a strong spiritual background. She took me in. I couldn't get in the class. I got in a painting classroom, and the painting classroom was connected, and I could see in. So the whole time I'm painting. So painting was my first art class.
Okay.
So that's why like paintings are around, because I do like painting. Painting did teach me how to see, like contour.
Yeah.
It taught me how to slow my hand down and really like have my eye where my hand is. Some good Miss Vito, amazing high school teachers like Sarah Youngberg. Honestly, like and a lot of them are still practicing. Like, and so So then it was just like happenstance of why clay then. But then once I got in there, it was like, why clay? Because I was terrible at it and I thought I was good at everything. And so then it was just like, I need to master this thing. And I couldn't get the wheel, but I had some skills, like my slab stuff was cool. We had to do like a slab coil, and then learn some stuff on the wheel. And so things were working, but like the things that I thought I wanted weren't. And so it just like pulled me in. I changed my whole schedule, and she turned it and made a program so there could be AP, like how there is in like the English and math. And so then they made one for the ceramics arts, and I was able to tutor in high school. I was already like practicing tutoring like the freshmen in their beginning class if they needed it, because one of my hours was like a study hall, but I would just be in there, like mix clay. Oh my gosh, like it changed my life. I wasn't like fully magnetized to it. I kind of wished like maybe it just been like, but like I really did have to find my own way. I knew I was so focused, and my teacher, one of the last weeks of senior year, I took time off in between college. That's all really? She's like, maybe you shouldn't rush right into it. And it's like, but my mom wants me in school if I'm still living at home, and like that sort of thing. So school didn't seem like it was the best place for me. I never really fit in, but like I was like, if I'm gonna make a way in this 9-to-5 corporate world at all, it's gonna be through art it's ceramics and then maybe teaching. So right away I was like, if there's any job, it's going to be teaching. Didn't know why, but now I love teaching. I'm not teaching young kids currently. I was doing after school programming. Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation, shout out PBMR. It's on the South Side, great program. Returning citizen programs, youth programs, mother who lost their kids to gun violence programs. And so we were just kind of just clay, in the basement, and we'll just teach them techniques. So that has really transformed my life, because before that I was kind of just teaching affluent people in expensive studios, and a lot of them retired, that sort of stuff. And so it really transformed of like what I knew clay could do. Like I already knew it. Like I was low-key called a clay evangelist like over 10 years ago. And at first kind of like, ooh, that's weird. And then I was like, no, I'm a freaking clay evangelist. Like I talk about sensibility through clay, learning about yourself. And to me, that gets you closer to the source. That gets you closer to the Most High, And I feel like, yeah, we have these mirrors in us that we do get to access and experience that. But, that doesn't mean we're gods. It just means we can understand that.
As you said, how did you start with clay? It was a little bit of like challenging for you. So it's a very interesting way that,
right.
It's been a challenge, but you decided to go into it and you kind of fall in love with it.
I try to remember what was given to me, like really in the classroom. And then I realized like, nothing. Yeah, I spent time and kind of developed furthering some ideas on some stuff, but it was all shown through workshops and clay demonstrations in the classroom, seeing things online, and then realizing like, for the reason I wanted to be in the classroom is so that I could be right there, because there's a directness, there's like a physicalness of clay and teaching clay that sometimes being right there and actually having a moment with them is super impactful. So I like the classroom because I give good demonstrations. I show up. I like to demonstrate. I do teach some classes differently depending on if they're like advanced seminar type classes or if they're beginner or intermediate. And I try to make myself very available. They think I'm blowing smoke, but I was like, dude, I was terrible at this. I've probably made 50 pots before I learned how to center. Like I couldn't center. I was just taking things off the wheel, whatever they would be, and like, yeah, and like loving it and being like, you don't love this? Like what? Like, and just kind of getting it. So I try to give them as much energy as I have and still have enough to, make it home and be at peace. Okay, I can teach and I can help people with the problems I think they're going to have. But then when they're in the classroom and have their problems, if I'm not listening and I'm just like giving them a solution to something that I know works, but it's not their problem, they might not understand it in that way. So I get a lot because I get to test myself every day of like questions. That's like, even when you were asking the question, I kind of knew what you were getting at, even though you couldn't find the word. So that's a skill. Now I have to reassess because I don't want to assume, but I am kind of like picking up on this. Oh, I can relate to people. Like that's a cool thing for me, you know? I like that. I like that I can kind of like interpret people's existence through how they hold and carry themselves. So, um, I try to share that like in teaching. I give that. I'm like, look, like I show them the worst of the worst like every day. I like look at like students as individuals. I do not really look at them as students because like I'm just a young 35-year-old person trying to make my way. So it feels cool sometimes to be like, yeah, these are my students. But I actually stopped saying that. Like these are peers that work in this space. Yeah, I can teach you things, but like you're also teaching me stuff. Same with like, yeah, that's something that I feel people take ownership in, which I get it. You know, we're kind of told to in life that way because then it's ours and we can monetize it. I kind of would give better advice than I would give myself, to be honest. Like even what I said earlier about like, yeah, maybe the way that I make art, I wouldn't really wish upon anybody because the awareness is taxing. The emotional part of it is kind of taxing, but like is who I am, you know, it's how I can relate and connect with people. I think, you know, even if it's like self-inflicted, I don't know, maybe it is some of it, but like it still does allow you to relate to pain. That's what we should be doing right now, like as people in society, as artists, is really responding to these things we're seeing that like hit us here. And then it's like, okay, what can I do that actually has an impact in a way versus just do something, whether it be like outward facing, maybe performative, like, but no, like where's the impact landing? Who's feeling the impact? So why sculptures? Like you were talking about sculptures. So as a trained potter, I denied myself creative liberties to make sculptures for so long. Now, one thing I would do is learning ceramics, you screw up a lot. You learn through mistakes. So then through mistakes, you can alter, you know, because then all of a sudden something happened. There's a hole here. I have to do something. And I can remember trimming through a couple pots, the bottoms, and then like, wait, I can squish this and pull feet out of the clay. And all of a sudden I had these little bathtubs. They looked like mini bathtubs. They were just kind of boats because it was like a bowl that I squished to put the bottom together. And then just adding some clay. And when you do stuff like that, for once I didn't think, and I was like breaking rules. Like that was the first realization. Like all of a sudden I'm problem solving. I'm ignoring everything I was taught and I'm just patching clay. I'm just like making for the first time. I'm like, whoa. And I've already been throwing, this is in community college. So I've already have a couple years of kind of experience. I kind of think I know what I'm doing. And then you just problem solve. And it was in those moments where I thought it's not that I knew what I'm doing, but I'm comfortable with the unknown. I'm just like solving a problem. It can't get any worse. And the problem didn't need to be seen or be solved. It was just like, no, I had a solution to this and now it's just this visual object. And then I really got boxed in, saw myself as a potter, only kind of pursued the things that like the potters in the area pursued, not like the more artsy, figurative stuff. But then I actually applied for a residency at Northern Clay Center a couple years in a row and didn't get it, and just kept working at a tile shop, North Prairie Tile Works, shout out. So I got a job in the industry right after undergrad. So I was a glaze technician.
It was in Chicago or?
Nope, we're still in Minnesota. Yep. Okay. So I went to the University of Minnesota after the community college. So Anoka Ramsey for 2 years, was about to transfer, was still thinking about Manitoba in Canada, but then the teacher opted out to follow opt out of their contract to follow a passion. And so I was like, well, I was going to that school for him, so I'm going to stay at the community college. Got a scholarship, got a whole third year for free, and just kept practicing. I was doing the little art fairs around Minneapolis, and I kind of had a thing going, you know? I was like, okay, I'm going to transfer to U, finish this up. And so then when I transferred to the University of Minnesota, I was in Warren McKenzie's studio, big inspiration of that area. And he was a potter, affordability, as cheap as they could be, get them in people's houses, use them every day. So that was like this mindset that I had. Like I was already doing that, so I'm going to keep doing that. Applied again for the Northern Clay residency. I applied for a job too. I got the job offer. I didn't get to be seen as an artist again for like the third time. And I also applied for the l8street residency for the first time. And I had got the job offer from Northern Clay Center, and then I was rewarded the option to accept the l8street residency. And I was like, dang, I felt like I was trying to get a way in at Northern Clay Center for so long. I didn't know if I was like running, and I was like, wait, these people are like seeing me as an artist. Like, let's go. My wife, Danica, we had already talked about going to Chicago potentially for undergraduate school. And so we had already brought it up. It didn't pan out. Mm-hmm. And then she was kind of in. So through the l8street residency, that's when I started making sculpture. I needed to respond to the world. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, why do I have to stand by these pots and tell the stories? Like, when you can actually make a visual language that can represent itself in some ways, you know? That year, 2018, 2019, just probably made about 5 series of works without questioning. Very different from like some sculptures to like these sculptures, you know? So very different aesthetically approaches, because I was like kind of taking an idea and then just pushing it through these different lenses. So kind of very similar ideas in all of this about spirit, body, you know, relationships. Yeah, the figures themselves are kind of imaginative about like spirit, and thinking about all the beautiful people in my life, no matter what their background is, just bringing parts of them to these things, kind of like an amalgamation of everything. Mm-hmm. Like, because I feel like that's really how we are. Like, the globe is a big petri dish, and we're just floating around. We think we have all this control. It's like, yo, this is a box of hope right here. And simple, kind of more like this. Very simple. And they actually came from scraps. They came from all like my extra exhaust. So we have slop buckets in the studio, scraps. When you make parts, there's always like extra that gets cut off, waste. So I was in a small studio for the first time, and I was like, okay, I don't have giant slop buckets. I don't have a plug mill to mix. So I'm like using the material then and the exhaust of the material to like pound these squares. So that's like what these really were, you know, pounded these squares down. They were kind of blank, and I wrote hope on them. Who knows? And this was like 2019. So these are a new version. I launched these at the Highland Park Art Center for the Facades exhibition, with these little characters on them actually. And it was like this thing that happened in the studio was like, wait, I can say that this means these, represent it, and start putting them in the world, and they can represent those ideas. And it really started like, as a teacher opportunity, is like, I reminded myself, well, yeah, that's how everything is, you know? people just decide in these systems, this is what this is how we're going to use it. And so I was like, why not? Like, I'm just one person, but I started thinking about a little more holistically, myself, my clay, my art, the kiln. Whoa, kind of doing rituals. I'm using oxygen and heat to change earth, mind, minerals, and elements. It's like we are all of that. And I mean, I believe that like Eve came from Adam's rib in a way, like whether it's actual events, whether it happened through coding. Like that's the thing about some of this language. I think it's just coded. Well, like how we are in that, we're not always human because that's the thing about spirit and word is like we're channeling these things through our consciousness. So it's like sometimes I think we have access to like experiences that aren't even human. And so it's like I totally went on a spaceship ride right there and totally forgot where I was going. I let myself do that. And sometimes when you're in your safe space, you don't have to get right back. Like like I leave breadcrumbs, I can come back, I can get safe, but like sometimes it's nice to get up there and just wonder. You don't have to have an opinion, but you see things. Like you really see a wholeness of things. And so like with these objects, I was new to Chicago and then I had them. I didn't know how to sell them because I was already selling pots for really cheap. So I was like, I'm going to put $2 on these. And so these kind of became my low $20, $30. It's like, okay, that'll help my mugs be a little more. But at first I was giving them away because I was like, these are seeds of hope. But then as an artist, these are literally seeds to my practice. So I'm seeding the world with my art before anybody has to buy it. Anybody has to do anything. I'm just planting it. Hope here. Evolve. So like even like those now. And I have like these little like packagings of them. So these ones are actually mysterious because they're all a little bit different. So they're kind of like a mystery box little play. And then I've been getting more because I do like fashion and stuff too and accessories. So I've been making these little like kind of pendant ones that you can clip on super easily. Oh, hit the mic. Clip on super easily. Piquet chains and stuff.
That's too, amazing.
And so those have become like this thing now that's like huge. I could just run with this, I could now granted in the art world there are a lot of cube type faces. Characters have become huge in especially in Chicago. I was just talking about this with my homie Milk Breath. Shout out Milk Breath. Like we could all go into these characters, and I love that I have a character, but I don't have to like push it on everything. And this isn't my character. This is like a building block. This is like a piece of dice. It's just like hope, but like when you start stacking them. And so I just simplified it. I just gave it human eyes and mouth, kind of. These are like an extension of like an investment in a small art practice. It's like when you invest in these, it's like it's going into representing what I'm doing with these, and how I'm doing it. And every time I sell them, even give them away, it's inspiring to kind of like keep that form of connecting with strangers because I feel like it breaks the matrix. It's fun because like as an artist there is like this crazy thing that maybe those things do grow in lives of their own and ways of their own. I think that's cool because for me the Most High is in them, like to me my mission, my faith is in them, my doubt is in them. Like you can't have faith without doubt. So this is like when hope grows legs. Because this is a hope stone that is now taking on human form. Has a history, you can't quite really see it or make it out, but there's literature, can't really read it. And so that's where now it's taking another form, evolution of itself, As someone who is like making coil pots, making pinch pots, I even have some soft slab stuff. I even have some slip cast stuff. But I would have to say when I kind of know the mission, and I got the clay in my hands and I am just like coiling up, or like if I've been on the wheel for a while and I'm like just like throwing some stuff and I know it's like, oh, these are 50 50 mugs for this client, and they're like kind of simpler design where I can just kind of tap back into these things. I do like those like mindless kind of work days. Those aren't bad for me. You know, that's kind of like if I had to pick a job, still going to be work, but it's like, yeah, I kind of enjoy the process. I feel like a craftsman in that way, and I feel like I'm in a workshop, you know. But like making the sculptures now is by far my favorite. Yeah, they can just be so dynamic. For me, risky because I'm learning as I'm making. I am doing some editing, but like I'm kind of making choices like, now I'm making this for the first time and this is what it's going to be.
You mean the bigger sculptures?
Some of them, yeah. Like with like, I'm thinking of like this one and some of these heads, I kind of had like the shape because they have a footprint, but then I do kind of let them move a little bit, like just a little bit. Kind of in the process because I want that life in them, you know. But yeah, developing the work is fun because I'm in the news, I'm in my music, I'm in here, you know, maybe snacking on something, and I'm always like making, and then I'll like take a step back and I'll like assess. So I am actively pushing back against my preconceived ideas of the piece, not out of like safety or out of like this is happening, just like no, it's out of a form of control, like prototype control. It's like no, this is showing me that there is a better angle to do this, or now this is calling for representation of this element of the piece or something, you know, whether you're kind of developing elements, which I would say I am, and symbols, you know, in that. So I'm kind of symbolically connecting these things through like visual symbology, but then kind of how I think they represent my ideas and stuff too. So yeah, the sculptures have been fun. The Trinity sculpture, that was kind of about like myself, my wife, and my relationship to the Most High and how that works in that. The wet work, like I do like that. But as you might be able to tell, I actually love glazing too.
So you don't have like a consistent structure how you create. It's just coming and you just go with the flow.
Yeah, I wish I did. I am building towards that, but balancing. For a while, I was teaching 8 classes a week, so it was like whenever I could get in here, you know. From like 2018 to 2020, I kind of had it too sweet, and I wasn't cracking down on myself enough. I was still kind of going to Wilson a lot on my lunch breaks, you know, and skating more, where it's like, dang, I probably could have figured some out in that time and had a little more rigid where I didn't need to teach more. I would love a little more rigidness, expected days back in the studio for sure, because as I'm getting disciplined, I'm very strict with like my home routine. Like this morning, wake up, I have miso before I have coffee. I read the Bible. I read this morning, and then I do like my routine of like little bit of stretches, mindfulness. Some days I meditate more than I stretch. Some days all of a sudden I'm doing 100 I'm doing 200 push-ups today. But I make sure I give myself like 20 minutes like that, 20 minutes in a book, 20 minutes to sit and stare, and then it's like, okay, I'll make coffee now and then. So I would love to flow that into my studio. I would probably roll out a slab every day, because I like to make extensions of my work. So now it's like I make little magnets of like the vase cards that I like. So there's ways that you can be really dynamic in a space, you know, and so because of my practice is evolving, I think my space needs to evolve. I am kind of want more space, but I can't afford it right now. So I'm making do. Trying not to piss off my studio mates. So love you, Sarah.
Do you work in the silence or you listen to something?
Oh, it varies. I would say it's maybe 20% silence, 70% terrible news, and then 10% music. It's normally news in here because like this is the only space that as soon as I'm hearing the shit I'm like getting it out. So I'm just like, okay, in here I can hear it, and then I'm just like, nah, fuck all that. Where if I'm at home, all of a sudden I'm thinking and dwelling on the news, and I'm not active because I think through moving. So
just
that
like
yeah. I mean, there is music, but a lot of the times the music is mine. Like it is something I'm developing. So that's why I don't really let music, because music for me is sacred because all my music comes from my art practice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I want my rhythm of me making to make my music. So it's a lot of the times beats that I'm trying to build songs for, or music that's like comforting. Like there are rare moments where, okay, if I am making 150 mugs commissioned, I might just turn on some nostalgic album, and that's an hour long, just so it's like, okay, I know by like this song, I'm probably going to have 50 of these done, you know? So there's these little things you can do. You don't even have to look at a clock then. And so the music will come in those kind of mundane spaces. Now I like thinking, and I like, I'm like actively thinking in my space too. So having like a juxtaposition with the news is good because everything I'm doing is completely juxtaposed. And so it like makes me more well-rounded, I think. And it makes my pieces maybe even more approachable, like, because I'm like trying to bring in all these sides. It's like, okay, if you say this, I'm going to put both these things you like in the middle and both things you don't like on the same piece, you know, and really start to like beg the question, like, what is it really that's pissing you off about this, you know? This is like the Trinity that I was talking about. So this one was just shown in Facade, and I had like a cool little install with like, this is kind of like the big Godhead, the Most High, and then it was like flanking with like a husband and a wife. Yeah, these pieces become really dynamic because like all these things that I'm interested in then get to like find space. So this is like weird connections of like how I think coding and symbolism breaks down, because there's these things in numerology that like when you take this number, it's like 1 billion, I'm not going to say it, times 1 billion, 1 million, and it equals, and they start to be reoccurring. I forgot what this means, but when it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that's how they break down. And so like what that's looking at is then like the 1 times 1 is 1, 11 times 11 is 111. And then 111 times 111 is 1,111. So it's this weird breakdown of numbers. And like, I'm really interested in that, like gematria, all this. And so I kind of load these up like almost if they were going to be unpacked, you know, and try to be like understood. It kind of can't be. So it's like, why do we think we can understand history just by digging it up? No, you're just projecting. Yeah. Silencing their ethics, pockets full of toxins. How do you reach the youth amused but you lost them? Most of the forms are kind of in that, like the majority of them, 70% in the first day for sure. Those are two kind of squarish, kind of thinking of the stones a little bit too, like the hope stones kind of heads. And so this one was actually from Nancy, who just curated the show, Nancy Pierre at Oliva Gallery. I was like walking around l8street one day, like needing to talk to some people. I think I was advertising a show or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm having issues building. I was using red clay. And I was like making these, and I had a couple fail. And I like 4. And I maybe could have patched them, but I was like learning new techniques, so I scrapped them. I was like, I'm just going to keep working. And she's like, I use this 420 sculpture clay. And I was like, oh, do you think I could have a little piece? And I like literally like driving to my studio, like had this in my hand, kind of like making it, you know, and I was like, okay, I'm going to fire it. And I was like, this is sick. Like this clay is amazing. And so that's when I switched. But then at the end, I was like, wait, I'm going to make a tile for this. And like, this is a piece, you know, like, so I kind of try to reassess and really leverage my art. Like the artist should be able to leverage their art, their markets, not the other way around. Like I really think we can take control back. I think artists can have work in multiple different markets. I think there's really savvy ways to do it. And so I'm trying to do that with like having these works with a really small dynamic works. The last piece that I made for the Facade show up at Highland Park, and this was kind of my first time. So I have been making sculptures now. They're all kind of figurative. So this was the first time that I was like, I'm going to make a vessel, a sculptural vessel. This might be my first one, unless you consider some of these vessels, but this was the first one I was thinking about, kind of form and vessel. And then in form, I was kind of thinking of like loose, Mingei, really slow Japanese throne pottery. And I was like, okay, I want this to have some of that quality. I want the form to be a little bit soft when I'm building it, because I kind of want it to look just like something that's live, like a globe, but like maybe like a slumping piece of clay, just something that looks like there's life, but it's like depleting or whatever. And then I have these hope stones on here kind of like magnetized to the piece. Visually, it kind of reminded me of like the COVID virus thing. But then aesthetically, I kind of like that too. It's just like being stuck, being magnet, like when we take a magnet across the floor, how those things. So these are the hope stones, around like the sculpture. So it's kind of like a symbol of my own hope, and foundation in like sports, basketball. And then let's see if I can turn this around a little bit, because I have like 3 different inscriptions on here. Now, normally I don't do this. Not that we have to like read them exactly, but I want to see if I can remember. There's like a Bible passage. Yeah, John 12. These were the last developed idea. I did include some of them in the show, but I left some for myself. The vase car. I don't know why, but I've almost never been so excited about a vessel, because this is the first time where I saw all my historical knowledge of vessel making, utilitarian ceramics, and my sculpture come together in one piece. Like really my surfaces, my aesthetic, and then kind of the history of why I made the vessel this way, why the top of the vase still is kind of formal in that sense. And it's just a vase car. It's just fun to say. The potter in me is making those, even though they're very sculptural, contemporary kind of ceramics. And then I'll talk about these because this is like the complete opposite end of the spectrum. These come from upcycling ideas. I was like thrifting, doing a lot of just silk screening. Someone dropped off some molds at l8street. I disregarded them. They were like, anybody can have them. They were all incomplete. And then I found one car that was like somewhat complete. I took that. I had some old slip. It was consistent enough to make it. And then that influenced me to like, wait, were there any more of those incomplete molds left? Because I felt like I was kind of like upcycling other people's history. And then it was kind of like an algorithm. It was like a physical visualization of what problems we could get with like AI. Because if we only give them the problems in the world where it's like, I only can give this piece problems of an unfinished camel, unfinished bird, bunny, and put them together, the solution might be dope and beautiful, but it's like it's pre-concocted in this way that like it's going to have limitations. Like there's just going to be limits that I think this piece, not saying that it does all that, like I love this just being an odd sculpture, maybe a misunderstood one, but it's a bunny riding a camel and it says eat the rich, bitch please. But these are actually pretty cool because they're dynamic, and some of them are like kind of shakers, maracas, different tones. These little vessels are also like flutes, or maybe kind of more understood like an ocarina. That's like a word often used. So these ones I was kind of trying to get sounding nice. And it's like a dope like little whale with the blowhole. Some of them, like this one's kind of like an otter / river rat with like a third eye. I'm not exactly sure. One of the most dynamic, maybe I think this could make me rich, unless it gets stolen in this interview. From somebody's watching this, but like these are like little chain sculptures. They're kind of cool little creatures. They can be stacked up kind of in interesting ways when they're sitting on the shelf. They could be put on your wall in your house. For cat lovers, dog lovers, farm animal lovers, they just kind of reference animals like in their patterns and in their faces. These are some old renderings of like a random set of stuff. These were the very first things that I put like Babylon, which is like my MC name, on. So I actually started like putting it on some ceramics. Now I haven't quite like done anything with this stuff, but I was kind of thinking of of like, maybe I could develop something specific for that. This is my wheel right underneath there. So I still have it. Kind of like a workbench though, when you put this over it. And then, yeah, I got some car magnets in process. And this is what it looks like. A lot of shuffling. It's a small space. So like when I'm glazing, I have to move some things, get the glaze out. Then that goes back, under glaze comes out. My clay kind of buckets and slips are here. Have some more glazes kind of down. Trying to be organized. It's important but hard. You know, you're always shuffling. So I try. You know, I feel pretty good, but when I'm working, like you can tell I'm working if my table looks like this. You know, because this is how I work. Like I just need things close. I throw it down, then I'll grab it. Sometimes it creates opportunity to grab a different tool. You know, and like out of impatience and be like, should I use this? And maybe it'll be better. You know, some is helpful, some is not, but, and then when I start, I'll just quick clean everything off and kind of like fresh.
I think let's move to another space.
Dope. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I would love to go to my apartment with you guys.
Cool.
And I'll show you, that's the inspiration zone. That's why it's important. Because being a married man, we just celebrated 9 years of marriage. We've been together 18. Like you'll see, it's my sacred space. So I love inviting people in and showing you like, yeah, how I get inspired, how I dabble. My cats.